All right, so hi, this is Basil the N2V. I have a special guest with me today, Sami Shalabi. Sami is a software inventor and an entrepreneur living in the Boston area. He now works at Google after the acquisition of Google of his company Zinco, which he co-founded in 2006. Currently, he works in engineering management at Google for the Google Friend Connect, Google Buzz, and many secret projects. He led both technical vision and implementation projects prior to that at IBM, Lotus, and Iris Associates at MIT. First, let me welcome you to the show, Sami.
Thanks for having me, Basil. It's good to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure. So let me dive into the questions and start by asking you about the acquisition. I'm assuming you get to ask this question all the time with your interviews.
Yeah.
So let's start by that. How did the acquisition take place, and what sort of things have you done to get noticed?
So this is actually an interesting question, primarily because it's not we kind of as a company and as a startup and as an entrepreneur. I think thinking of the exit as part of building your company and optimizing for an exit is kind of the wrong way to think about how to grow your company. At the end of the day, you need to create value. And you need to build a business and build a company and do whatever is necessary to build your brand and build your business. And then an exit will happen to come along the way, as opposed to us optimizing for an exit. So in the particular case of Google, they actually just reached out. They were looking for smart people that understood the mobile social space and were doing interesting and exciting things. And we were just aggressively pursuing it, and it just literally came out of the blue. And, when you get a phone call, hey, this is Google, we're interested in talking to you and learning more about what we're doing. I mean, you say yes, of course. What do you want? Wow. But the key point, we were kind of a young startup. And like any startup, the key idea is, in order to get noticed, is it's not about looking for someone to exit with. It's about getting people to notice your business. So it's basically networking. I mean, that's kind of a core business concept. If you're a young startup, you have no brand, no one's heard of you. It's all about essentially trying to build user value. Mm-hmm. Or customer value, depending on the vertical. And then the second part is reaching out and just not being so secretive about anything that you're doing, especially when you're a startup, so that people look at you and think of you as a potential target when they're in the mindset. So that's kind of one point. The other point is we were kind of in a space where there was a lot of attention. The mobile social space in 2007 was very, very hot. Almost all the social networks were figuring out trying to figure out how to become part of mobile. Dodgeball was a big exit, I think, in 2000, 2005, 2006. And usually, typically, when you see technology, large vendors getting into certain spaces, a lot of their competitors a lot of their big competitors, for example, if Microsoft enters a field or Google enters a field, all the other competitors tend to start saying, well, how can we enter the same field? There's some validation that there is something there. And one of the ways that happens is if they don't have an internal investment, they look for an acquisition. So that's kind of how I think we got discovered. We were in a very interesting space. We weren't quiet. We happened to be networking with the right people, and we just got on their radar. We got on their short list.
And how long did the process take from the point that they picked up the phone till they closed the deal?
I can't disclose a lot of the details of the process, but I'll just say Google's very thorough with their acquisitions. I mean, the whole team was interviewed. Every piece of paper, every legal piece of paper was thoroughly examined. And there's a lot of talking, and this was also at a time when Google hadn't done a lot of acquisitions. Mm-hmm. So even though we were a smaller acquisition relative to something like, we went through a pretty rigorous acquisition process. I don't know if it's changed, but Google is very thorough and is very serious about their acquisitions, because it's not just about the acquisition, making sure the people, that there's a good team fit. Um, there's matching visions about how one would approach the acquisition. And there's a lot of details to be sorted out, especially when you've got investors.
So a question about also getting noticed. What's your advice to startups in Arabia, and how do you think they could go and get exposed to this vertical and those big companies, and open up their eyes to small startups and other?
At the end of the day, is create value, target a global market when you can, and the last thing is, this is something I've observed whenever I visit the Middle East and I reach out to entrepreneurs. A lot of people tend to be very secretive, which I find quite odd, especially when you're a startup. If someone can copy your idea by you virtually describing it to them, it's probably not an idea that's worth pursuing, and is not protectable, and it's not a large enough idea. And anyone who's been through the entrepreneurial journey knows that taking an idea and executing on it is very, very, very difficult. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not magic. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. So my advice to them is, sell to anything that moves when they can, and get out there. I mean, it's especially if you are looking. I mean, this is actually one of the bigger challenges for entrepreneurs in the Middle East, is the lack of exits, because there aren't that many people within the region that are willing to acquire. Most of the acquirers tend to be outside of the United States, and it requires some investment to get out there and go to the conferences and go to the meetups and go to the whatever, and just remind people that you exist. And this is not specific. This is not just This is just general entrepreneurial. I mean, when I'm at Google, I'm based out of the Boston office, which is a satellite office. The mothership is California. There's no if or buts at Google. I go out there once a month just to remind them that I exist. So when things happen, so that's kind of one thing, is just get out there, talk about what you're doing, and it also gives you good feedback. And then the second, and like I said before, is create something that's impactful and valuable to users, and just really focus on building a great product with a great team.
So working at Google, now you're currently working on projects like Google Buzz and Friend Connect, which are not very I say successful as opposed to other Google products. What have you thought about maybe pursuing something again on your own and allocating entire time for a startup and pursuing that entire venture creation and exit?
Absolutely. So talking a little bit about Google Buzz and Google Friend Connect. Google Friend Connect, let's start, because that was one that I created, me and my actual co-founder from Zinku, this guy named Mussy Shore. We created Google Friend Connect, and we actually created the Connect space. And if you look at the metrics for Friend Connect, I haven't looked at them in a while, but it is a very successful product in the long tail. I mean, it's on 12 million sites, over 500 million monthly uniques. I mean, it dominates the long tail. But one of the things that we've learned as part of that, it was actually the first product in the Connect space. Facebook copied us with Facebook Connect, and MySpace, I think, are they still around? MySpace ID, or I forget what it is, but a lot of follow-on products kind of took that. So there was a lot of great functionality. But kind of the next step for something like a Friend Connect was to move up from the long tail up to kind of the torso and higher end websites, the more noticeable brands. And in order to do that, a key part of a widget. A widget's kind of social strategy is that you need a social destination to drive traffic, and that's actually why Google is now investing very heavily in creating their own destination. So the things we've learned from Friend Connect, the things we've learned from Buzz, have actually been a catalyst to help us create what is known as Google Plus. This is kind of an important space. And it's not that those individual products, but we've been trying to do things in social, but it all boils down to, well, we need to be in the social space. I mean, it's not just those two things. I mean, we've done open social. We've done a lot of things in the social space, but in order to get there, you need a strong social destination, and that's actually been a really good input into getting to what we're seeing in Google Plus. So that's the first part. The second part, I think, of your question is why am I not doing my own venture? This is actually a question I ask myself, and I tend to every couple of months ask myself, well, why am I here? And if I want to stay at Google, what would I do? And then that helps me decide what I want to do. And now I'm actually been focusing, and to Google's credit, I mean, it's actually a really good environment. I mean, if you ask me what's Google like, it's actually a bunch of little startups. It's a startup ecosystem. It's not. I mean, like everything, you dream up your ideas. In the same way in the real world, you come up with an idea, you do an implementation, you shop it around, and basically, there's a bunch of people that act like internal VCs. You go pitch your ideas with an implementation with the same sorts of rules as it exists in the VC world, and you get funded. And that's the kind of environment, and I'm actually cooking up something really exciting.
I was going to actually come to that, and I know some stuff is confidential, but something to share.
I can't say, but it's the kind of thing where if working at a place like Google, you can dream big because the brand is strong. It's got incredible infrastructure to help grow. I mean, Google has the clout to change industries, and that's kind of where my head's at. And if I were to stay at Google, I need to be working on something that's going to have very big impact and can potentially change an industry. And that's what and that's all I'll say right now. But it's coming soon.
Sounds interesting. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so jumping to the VC space, you successfully raised funds in the past. Mm-hmm. What pointers do you give to entrepreneurs, especially in Arabia, on going about raising funds?
Yes, so actually, a bunch of people often approach me for angel investment, and the thing I come back to them is they talk about these ideas and they've got 1,000 little ideas, etc. But one of the biggest pieces of feedback I give is that the cost of building a prototype, especially in software, because that's just what I understand mostly in software, is that it is very, very, very cheap to get going, to create a working prototype of whatever their idea. I mean, Zinku cost us a total of a few $1,000s to get the service up and running prior to getting our funding round. When we were walking into these VC, when I was looking for money for Zinku, I had a strong track. I mean, I done good stuff, good pedigree, went to MIT, worked at IBM, was involved. But it was the first time I was an entrepreneur outside of a corporate context. So I wasn't a proven quantity by any stretch of the imagination. But when you walk in with a working prototype, like, oh, wow, these guys, it's not a theory. It's not PowerPoint presentations. They don't need, 600 people, a team of 20 to actually get off the ground. Look at this, bunch of 3 guys, 1 business guy, 1 product designer type person, and 1 engineer were able to build a very compelling product that looks really exciting, that addresses a user need and is in a very large disrupted market. So my advice has always been, go build a working prototype, then make sure you have a complete team, then start looking for people to invest. And so it's basically bake your idea a little more than just it being an idea on a napkin. So that's my advice to entrepreneurs. It's basically look for try to solve a real problem, build a working prototype, complete your team, and make sure you're in a space that has that's a large enough market. In our case, it was mobile. Mobile. You look at any statistics, it looks big. The amount of SMSs were off the charts. The amount of, at the time, SMS was big. This is pre-iPhone, pre-everything. But it's still, mobile, for example, still is a huge, huge industry that's highly disrupted and with an unpredictable future. So there's lots of very exciting things that can happen.
So you hold over 30 patents, Sami, and I understand more to come. What is the dominant, space for those patents? And geez, I mean, you have a lot of patents. Do you have a systemic way to, produce such patents, or what's the deal?
So it's patents. I have a lot of patents in software, so I don't have patents in mechanical engineering. So a lot of them tend to be related to the work I've been doing. And basically, it's innovation. And anyone who's in software knows the act of innovation and invention isn't an aha moment. It's not that you wake up one day, oh, I figured it out, and then you basically start working on it and solve it. It's a process. It's a long, long process. And kind of my formula for a lot of for kind of my innovative process is not that it first starts with exposure. I mean, I will buy every gadget ever made. I will play with any service. I will talk to anybody about any ideas they have about, because that's where you get your inspiration from the world around you, for ideas. I mean, just to give you a concrete example, my very, very first patent was this product called Friend Connect, and kind of the gist of it was, it's actually a very, very valuable patent. IBM owns it, but it's essentially the process of being able to design a website, an end user being able to design an entire website and user experience from a website, which is the thing you see in blogs, the things you see with a lot of these. And this was in the 90s, so this was before Blogger, before all the stuff, where someone could come and basically upload the design and look and feel through HTML, and suddenly their website would be transformed, and there's some custom markup language to do that. So that was my very first one, and the inspiration from that is, I don't know, maybe I'm dating myself. At the time, pirated MP3s were really hot when I was in college, and there was this one program that was very, very popular for playing MP3s. It was called Winamp. Mm-hmm. And that program had this concept of skins. You can download these things, and suddenly it changes the look and feel. And basically, that's where that idea came from. It was kind of inspired from something completely unrelated. And as I look back at kind of a lot of the things I've done, a lot of them tend to be good ideas in other areas that you kind of pull in to what you're working on.
Fantastic. So currently you sit on many companies in MENA, Sami. Can you tell us about those companies and some of those exciting ventures?
So, I mean, that's not that many. I mean, there's one that I'm very actively involved with. I sit on the board. I actually ended up investing in. It's called Istikana, which is basically trying to transform how people consume video and TV, premium video content in the Arab world. It's pretty much a free service where high-quality premium video shows are available online for free, streamed to the user, and they've done a lot of very, very cool work. The founders are based out of Jordan and Dubai, and Hazem. The other one, and I think they're in a space where the TV industry is highly disrupted. The internet is going to disrupt completely how people consume video content. The amount of piracy that exists in videos is transformative. And also, if you look at the overall metrics in the region, bandwidths are there. There's also an appetite for it. Saudi Arabia is the fastest growing YouTube consumer and if you look at the stats in the fastest growing YouTube consumer in all for all countries. Arabs love their videos, and I think these guys it's a very, very strong team, and they've secured some pretty amazing content. Yeah. The other one I'm on the advisory board for is Nahwa, which I think a lot of the readers, it's basically a platform for volunteerism, which is trying to impact social change. Kamil Asmag is the founder, and they've just been doing really, really spectacular work trying to mobilize the young people. Actually, my favorite campaign that they did was a campaign called Mishaib, which is telling our youth it is okay to get a job in a restaurant. It is okay to get it. And
That's
because
cool.
there's this general behavior in the youth that they want these very very impressive jobs with impressive titles for them to work. And as a result, the unemployment rates among the youth are very high, but they're telling them there are jobs for the youth. There may not be the most glamorous job, but it's okay. And I remember telling Kamil that when there was a period of our lives, this is post-Gulf War, I mean, we were struggling as a family, and I ended up working at one of the hotels in Jordan just because you have to do what you need to do. But it was a difficult time, but the general so that's they've done that, and they're creating, and their aspirations are to go beyond Jordan and to kind of have more broader impact, to kind of tap into to reaching the youth, and also trying to immobilize more volunteerism within the whole MENA. Those are the two I'm actively involved with, and I'm also involved with. I'm technically on the board, but I'm also one of the founders of Yalla Startup, which is about mobilizing early stage entrepreneurship in the Middle East. So there's a lot of very exciting things in the region. There's a lot of goodwill. There's a lot of opportunity. And basically, all I hear is good news. I mean, there's a lot of challenges, but a lot of times, all I hear is good news. So the youth have a big opportunity ahead of them. The other kind of interesting thing is that a lot of the youth, or a lot of these small startups, are a little scared sometimes, or intimidated to reach out to diaspora to have them get involved. And my advice to them is, a lot of the times the diaspora do want to engage. Half the time they just don't know who to engage with. So that's kind of related to the idea of being on boards. Don't be intimidated. There's a lot of goodwill in the diaspora, and they really want to engage, and half the time they just don't know where to engage. And cold call, it's okay.
So for the MENA region, can you recommend a few verticals that you think are really hot now for entrepreneurs to pursue, or just maybe domains, or I won't say ideas, but like I said, some verticals that could be something really hot, and not just even the MENA. I mean, could be globally hot.
Yeah. So I have this little spiel that I give folks, that we're in another major technological shift today. If you kind of look at in the history of kind of the computer industry, there's really been kind of a number of big transformations that a lot of developers, a lot of energy got devoted to. The first is the PC world. When the PC first came out, there's a lot of industry, a lot of technology, a lot of energy went into creating PC applications, whether it's games, whether it's productivity apps, whether it's word processing. It was just a giant industry that got created in the 80s. The second big one, if you look at kind of like that was a big climax. The next one was the internet. When the internet came out, it completely transformed how people built everything. And I mean, we're still kind of in the middle of that wave. The number of websites, the amount of value, everything that got created, the internet has completely transformed the software industry, and you cannot think of a software business where the internet isn't a core part of their business strategy, and also is where all their energy. And you look at companies like Google, etc., that are just purely internet companies. I think we're in the third wave, which is mobile. The amount of energy and the amount of developer focus that has come, that is dedicated to mobile, is fairly significant. So I think mobile, we're in the middle, we're in the beginnings and the middle of a mobile revolution. So I'm thinking that, and this is just the beginning. You look at the phones, the numbers are just staggering, even in the MENA. Over 90% cell phone penetration. You look at the Android numbers, it's basically almost, I think the last number is 550,000 activations a day of Android phones. The iPads are, I mean, the tablets are in the millions of tablets. So there's a big change that's happening. And the nature of mobile is very different from the internet and is very different from the PC because of the nature of how you interact with it, the touch screens, the speeds, the fact that it's very personal, etc. I think mobile still has lots of legs, and I think what's really interesting, especially for the MENA, it's one of the few mediums where there's a very strong payment channel built into it. So I think for the MENA, it's particularly good because the flow of money is a big challenge. I mean, there's no one I've talked to that hasn't said the flow of money is a big issue in the MENA. How do you get money from a consumer's pocket into your bank account as part of whatever transaction? And mobile it's one of the few channels which makes it very easy for these impulse transactions to occur. So that's one kind of big area. It's kind of one that's related to it. In the MENA, I think in particular, transaction-based businesses are much easier. Businesses that ultimately go into transactions, like for example, Groupon, the Groupon like Nabit in the UAE, where basically everything is a transaction. There's money flowing as part of everything. And so it's in the spirit of e-commerce. There's a lot of, I think, opportunities to automate and simplify how consumers get access to services, content through the MENA. So that's I think another big area. Especially when you live in the US, you get exposed to a lot of things that you take for granted. When you visit the Middle East, you're going, oh my God, what? It's too hard to buy a movie ticket. What? This is too complicated. Why do I need to talk to a human being? Not that I don't like talking to people, but
So, Sami, you mentioned Yalla Startup. How active are you in Yalla Startup, and what's in the works?
I don't like pre-announcing stuff, but I'm very, very active. I mean, Yalla Startup is essentially run by three guys: myself, Habib Haddad, and Ili Khourin. And you asked me how involved. I'm involved in the details. I still code. I still author. We still work on the strategy. We run it like a startup. And kind of our aspirations with Yalla Startup, I mean, we're a startup for startups. We like to focus on things we understand and know. All three of us are tech entrepreneurs. We've done a lot of interesting stuff in tech, and we basically apply all our tech expertise to make sure that we've kind of nailed a lot of the tech stuff. We basically try to enable entrepreneurs through technology. Things like the Q&A has been a big success. I mean, the quality of discussion has blown me away. We help people engage with experts. The online directory is very, very successful. It's probably one of the few online, I mean, there are a couple of others, but it's one of the few comprehensive online startup directories in the MENA where actually youth or entrepreneurs can discover that there are other entrepreneurs, because sometimes in the MENA people feel like they're alone. there aren't. We've also actually and kind of our approach with the things we do is we experiment, because it's a new market. Entrepreneurship is very new, and we're trying to add as much value to the ecosystem. So we experiment with things, and then we kind of see what's working and what's not. And we try to fill holes. I mean, the most recent experiment that we did that was very, very successful was the Yalla Startup Weekend, which we hosted in Lebanon last year. That was actually kind of it was mind-blowing because about 300 people showed up, and I think more than 30 startups were formed throughout that weekend. And what made me step back was we didn't know what the results were, but basically the idea of the startup is people show up the first day, they go up on stage, they pitch these ideas to the audience, kind of like the real world. And then basically after they pitch the ideas, they form teams. And then throughout the weekend, the team builds a startup. It builds a product where by the end of the weekend, they demo to press and to investors. So in one short weekend, they go from nothing to what's it like finding co-founders. Then basically they collaborate, co-founders, in discovering that they need to have a complete team. So they need a business person, a designer, an engineer, et cetera, et cetera. They get together, build something throughout the weekend, and at the end of the weekend, they get an opportunity to describe what they did to a very large audience. Most of them have never been through that cycle and discover that it's hard work, but it's not impossible. So at the end of the weekend, we've been hearing the ripple effects have been significant. People have been leaving their jobs, starting their own thing, and actually the winner of ArabNet was a company that was created at Yalla Startup Weekend. So I feel very proud of that. So that's actually been one interesting, and we've been seeing people replicate that throughout the region. There was one in Cairo a couple of months ago. So that's actually great news. It's starting to it's something that has been successful, and we're probably going to be repeating in the future. We have some other cool stuff in the works. We're still working out the timing because we're all part-timers on the project, but it's definitely great to see the impact of Yalla Startup on the community.
So, Sami, you mentioned the diaspora community in the U.S. Can you name a few cool companies, startups that you've seen?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
For Arab Americans?
There's a couple here that are actually good friends of mine. One is this company called PubGet, founded by a couple of guys, one of which is Lebanese, Rami Agnaout, and this other guy, Ian Connor, Ryan Jones. And what they're essentially doing is helping scientists and doctors find the research they need. It's basically a search tool for researchers that's kind of understands research publications. They index all the stuff. They do some very, very complicated heavy lifting to make it easy for these researchers to find the prior art for the research that they're doing. And they've been, I talk to them often, and they've just been doing really, really great work. And they've been growing leaps and bounds, and they're making money, and it's actually they're in a very, very happy spot. The other one that comes to mind, a good friend of mine, Ziad Sultan, started a company called Marginalize, and it was a Techstars company, and they're essentially helping users have conversations about things they see on the web, and helping users discover things. And they're just doing, again, when I talk to, he's a very charismatic guy. They're doing very, very exciting things. So those are two that come to mind as being that are near me, of friends that are doing really cool stuff.
I saw actually Ziad in the demo event a few months ago, and he did a pretty good job pitching his company on stage.
Yes, he also went to MIT, and very charismatic guy, very passionate about the field. He's got some really great investors, great product, great team. He's actually, I think, most of the engineering's done out of the Middle East. So
fantastic. So in closing, Sami, what advice and pointers do you give to entrepreneurs in MENA?
What advice? First, if you have an idea, just do it. Don't wait for investors. Don't wait for that. Just go build that first prototype. It'll help you learn if you actually have something that's worth pursuing, because it's just so cheap, so quick, especially if you're doing tech stuff. That's kind of, and don't try to think that you need investment too early. It's, you need to build your product, build your team before you go out and trying to raise money, etc. Don't waste your time on a business plan. I hear this. I think a lot of people say, "Oh, you need to write a business plan." Don't waste your time, because 90% of the time is the business plan. The first business plan is not worth the paper it's written on, because it's so incorrect. It's more important to have a working prototype and some resemblance of where you want to head, because the reality is that once you actually validate it, it'll completely the product, the focus will ultimately change. The second thing is, this is kind of my role. Do something that you'll actually use. That's kind of, most of the startups is basically solving my problem. I'm very, yeah. And as a result, you end up, because you're a user of your own creation, you end up you keep improving it, because you know what, you are a user. And you start enhancing it in ways, as opposed to going out and doing market research, etc. You need to be, there's a term you need to eat your own dog food. That's kind of an American term. Probably doesn't translate well in the Middle East. But
yeah, I wouldn't touch that.
Yeah. But you need to be able to, you need to be your biggest user. That's kind of another one where the kind of big piece of advice. And find people that complement you. You can't do it alone. Don't be. I mean, building a startup is a lot of hard work, and you need people that complement you to fill in the gaps. And kind of my general rule of thumb is make sure you have the founding team's 3 people is usually a good starting point. Having too many is bad, but having just being one person is not good either. It just helps scale. It helps complement, and it also creates an environment where if you're able to sell to other people over your idea, you've probably got something, and they can sell it back to you, and stay. And one thing that I notice a bunch of startups do, they start up and they get a little bit of money and they start hiring all these people. Stay lean for a little while until you have a formula. I mean, one of the things when we raised our money at Zinku, one of our goals was to stay as lean as possible until we had a formula that works. Then you scale, and then finally, just have fun doing it. I mean, a startup is fun. It's scary, but it's a lot of fun. And in closing, the numbers in the Middle East are staggering. So yes, there are global markets, but the Middle East, the internet numbers are just off the charts. 60 million internet users, 90%. I mean, I don't need to repeat the stats, but if you look online, they are staggering in terms of the potential There's a lot of white space. There's a lot of opportunity, and the next thing is to just do it.
Well, very inspiring. Thank you, Sami. We really appreciate having you with us today. And we look forward to having you again with us in the near term.
Oh, of course. And looking forward to it. Thank you so much for thinking of me. And it's great to have the opportunity to chat with you over Skype. Yeah.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.